I hereby call the Special Finance Committee meeting to order. It is Monday, October the 10th, 2022, 6 p.m. Roll call, please.
Tommy Pollard, Marcus Broussard, Lloyd Brown.
Here.
Warren Gotchison,
Here.
Brian Napier,
Here.
Paul Landry,
Here.
James Trahan,
Here.
Natalie Broussard, Scott Ronsonay,
Here.
Eugene Olivier,
Here.
Lady Fonette Brown, Scott Saunier,
Here.
and Chad Montgomery.
Here.
Thank you. We have a quorum. We'll go ahead and we'll start with the Fire District Protection Fund. Ms. Silger, if you want to start, and we'll go ahead and have a open format. We'll let you go, and then any questions, we'll go to the director after.
So I'll go ahead and, like we've done in the past, I'll go ahead and I'll address the major sources of revenue, and then we'll let the directors talk about the operational department, and then I can finish up with fund balance like we've done in the past. So Fire District is supported by an ad valorem millage. That levy is currently at 8.52 mills, which is the max. The tax is renewable every 10 years. They just had an election within the last year or so. The tax is currently set to expire in 2030. They also do get the money that comes from fire insurance rebate. And then you'll notice also that we have state supplemental pay that's recognized here. That's actually an in-kind type transaction. That money is paid directly to the firefighters by the state, but the locals are actually required for the reporting and the additional benefits associated with that transaction. So we have to gross up our numbers. So that's basically what we have there. So right at about 3.8 million each year, total revenue. So.
If you don't mind, 1 second.
Oh.
Let the record reflect that Mr. Broussard is in attendance, as well as Mr. Pollard.
Good afternoon. There's not a whole bunch of changes year to year in our budget. I've got, for some capital outlay stuff this year, we've got some recliners we're replacing, some mattresses we're replacing. One big purchase is a gear washer. It's about $10,000 we use that. That's for our bunker gear specifically, and that's what it's for. It's got a high rotation RPMs that it's got to have to be able to get the carcinogens and the trash out of our gear. So it's a real big unit. That's why the price is so high on it. Some storage boxes and other miscellaneous equipment. That's in our equipment line item. We were able to get POs acquired for 3 trucks. Those trucks will not be delivered till next year just because of the demand and the process. Got POs issued for bunker gear and air packs, and again, won't get any of those till after the first of the year. We may get the air packs in December, but I'm not going to hold my breath and wait on that. We just get them whenever they come in. Not much we can do about it, supply and demand. We give our departments, our volunteer stations, their money to kind of run their departments. And other than that, I really don't have a whole bunch unless you've got questions.
Question? Mr. Gotchison?
Yes, sir.
Good to see you. I do have a couple of questions. Under the Fire Administrative Division, it looked like the second line item on group insurance, seeing a significant increase. Is there any particular reason we paid $1,000 in 21 and then projected in 23, 23,787
That's workman's comp. Is that correct?
for group
Kim,
insurance?
Or is that the health insurance?
That's the second line item, health insurance, Kim. Is that for retirees?
Yes, that is the retiree.
Can you, can you give an
Oh.
explanation? Is it just more people have gotten on the systems?
So the retiree retired at the end of 21,
Okay,
Yeah.
and then you would have full years
okay.
of benefits in 21 and in 22 and 23.
That makes sense. I just wanted to clarify, the second one I had, still under that same line item, was the travel. Is that travel and training the reason we're going up 187%?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And then the only other thing I had is, it seems like each of the departments, y'all have kind of put a cushion in for utilities except for the training center. Is there any reason?
Because
I hate for you to have to come back for some.
Because we're pretty good at the training center with what
Okay.
we have. It's kind of hard to gauge at the volunteer stations. That's why we put a little cushion on the backside, and like this, so we don't have to keep coming back.
Absolutely. And let me just say, Chief, we've seen hard times. the last few years, and it's a breath of fresh air to see where y'all have gone and where we're headed, especially new equipment and still being able to retain our firefighters. That's something that we have struggled with in each of the departments. So kudos to you and your department, Chief.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Anyone else? Good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Communication District Fund?
Well, before we
Oh, you're
finish
done.
up, so I was approached a couple weeks back about calculating, additional salary increases. Mr. Gashazan had asked for. So what I had kind of planned to do was kind of address them as we go through the different funds, just to give y'all the information. I can prepare it in tabular.
Yeah, well, I guess I can ask you right now, if we're gonna just address that. In this proposed budget, am I reading correctly, around 2.5% is presented from the administration?
Correct. So, almost all have the 2.5. Fire district does have more than the 2.5. If you recall those couple years that you were referring to earlier. So state law requires you to give the 2%. We
Okay.
did not do that in 2 of those years. Last year, we did make up and give 4%, the 2% for that year, and then 2% for the previous year. So there's still one more 2% from the previous year. So this budget actually has 4%. So y'all had asked, so it already has 4% in it.
Okay.
So if the choice was to go to the 5%, it would be an additional $24,000 to this fund.
Okay.
So what I did was I calculated the salary plus the additional benefits, the Medicare and the retirement.
Okay, yeah,
So-
let me ask you, can we get that breakdown again? I think we had talked about 4% and 5%.
Right.
Those two
I'm
figures,
gonna
which
do it, I'm gonna do it tabular. I haven't finalized like all the funds. I've been kinda doing them like as we kinda get to them.
Absolutely.
So, I still have a few more left to calculate, but I'll do them tabular. That way y'all have that before, we go through for final
Mis-
adoption.
Mr. Chairman, just before Ms. Segura finishes, I'm glad she brought that up. I wasn't sure if we were gonna do that in the beginning or not. But we have talked about, and several council members are in agreement with having, I guess, a merit increase for each of the employees. And 4% and 5%, we say significant. It's still, with the way inflation is, it's not enough, but it's a start. We are determined to retain our employees and entice more to come, and we have to do something. I'm basically here to beg that our employees desperately need it, and I think the parish president and administration is on board. Now, I know there's been some talks about department heads, and we can get into the nuts and bolts of that at some point, but the projection from the administration has been 2.5%. I'd like to at least see 4%, if not 5%, if we can possibly, once we get down to the consolidated budget.
Does that,
You finished, Mr. Gustafson?
Yeah, yes, sir.
Mr.
just, going with that, when you're saying 2.5, 4, 5, is that across the board? Is it, if you give to one, you have to give to all, Kim? Or if the council says, hey, we wanna give to Public Works, but we,
No, I think we all were
No,
on the
I'm-
same line of each department. I think the only discussion amongst some of the members in the chambers was whether or not it would be a full-fledged, even department heads and regular at that rate.
Does that answer your question, Mr.
well,
Napier?
is that right, Kim?
I mean, the way that parish government has handled the salary increases in the past have been across the board, so,
But does it
you know,
have to be, my
well,
question though is, does it have to be that?
I mean, if you're asking like legalities, you'd probably have to, address that to Andy, but,
You wanna touch that one, Mr. Shealy?
And I'm not trying to start that, I'm just asking that if you want to give it to Public Works, give them a little bit more than say
You could
whatever.
do
I don't
that,
wanna
but the
pick one that,
You could do that.
you
The
could,
problem-
I just was wondering if you
Yeah,
can.
but it throws all of the, studies off and.
So it'd be
you have
best
to-
if you're gonna do it across the board.
Yes.
Okay, I got you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Shealy.
Excuse me, it also keeps you from getting into debate over which department is the most important in your functions, which is another thing that we probably would like to avoid also.
All right, anyone else? For Ms. Segura? Mr. Sonia?
I had a question, basically, and it's one of the comments that Warren made, in regards to not including the directors in this. I know for a fact they haven't had a raise in probably 6 years, so if we're gonna do something, I think if we're gonna do it across the board, do it across the board.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Cool with that?
That's it for
So
that
just
one?
to wrap up the fund balance for the fire district fund, starting 22, the fund balance is $4.2 million. There is a small surplus reported for fiscal 22. And then rolling into fiscal 23, the deficit is $379,000. So that brings the fund balance down to about 3.8 million. So we do have some bond proceeds that we recognized in last year, that the 1.2 million. We have some of that we're carrying forward, and then we also have the principal and interest payments, which are new for fiscal 23 in there. So that's pretty much it.
All right. Thank you, Chief. Thank you, Mr. Kerr. Well, you can't leave, though. No. All right, Communication District Fund.
Okay, so the Communications District Fund, the main source of revenue there is a fee charge based on telephone lines. It's collected on landline, cellular lines, residential and commercial customers. The rate was actually adjusted in in July of 22, effective later this year. We've actually, I don't think that we've actually seen the collection increase yet, but it's coming. And then they also charge for dispatch services that are provided to Fire District Number 1 and the City of New Iberia. That's approximately about $100,000. So collectively, in fiscal 23, you'll see the increase in revenue of about 1.4 million for that fund.
We paid off our bond. We'd done a bond, I don't know, probably 7-8 years ago. We paid it off a couple of years early this year. On the staffing, probably our biggest issue. Most of our functions don't really change from year to year. Staffing, huge problem for us. We've run about a 50% retention rate on the people we hire. We run about a 2-month training program before we'll let someone take 911 calls independently. We have 12 on our staffing document. That's 4 shifts, 3 people per shift. Right now, and since as long as I can remember this year, since early this year, we've only had 2 per shift for a total of 8. Sounds like a lot, but the minute one of your 2 night shift people, that's 6 p.m. to 6 a.m., calls in and says they're sick, they have a child care problem, that's suddenly a problem because the opposing shift only has 2 folks. I try very hard not to run my one supervisor ragged. He'll go in when it's needed. I've got to thank our employees. They've been very flexible. We try very hard not to jam them up and force them to come in. We've only had to do that a couple of times, and it's pretty distasteful. We're waiting for one person we've hired to come on. This person does have some call-taking background, so hopefully we won't see, it's better than a 50-50 shot this time. So when you look at my budget, we're well underspent. Of course, then you have to pay people more overtime to come in and cover. So I don't know if the numbers equal if we're 33% underspent, but you can see looking at the budget, we're way underspent on our staffing. I did cut one of our 2 senior positions. The position was vacant. I cut it in order to ensure, even after the fee increase, I needed to do that to make sure our budget was balanced. I'm being conservative. Hopefully the fee income will come in a little higher than is reflected in the budget you're looking at. And then what we're also doing, it's surprisingly difficult to audit the phone fees you get in. And the phone companies, they're not motivated to make it easy. So right now what I'm trying to do is collect some information. Ultimately, we might be forced to retain an auditing firm, to get the records from the phone companies. Based on what I'm looking around, I think some of our business phone system customers may not be being assessed the full 911 or any 911 fee. I know that because I found some of them. So my next step after the fee increase is to do an audit, and this could be a year-long process of I'm starting with the businesses, what they're actually paying, because it looks like the phone companies or the third-party billing consultants they hire, not all assessing the correct amount of 911 fees. That's really all I have, different from last year, subject to your questions.
Mr. Sonia?
So retention, and you don't have to do it right now, but I would be interested in understanding what your ramp-up cost is and what your overtime expense is. You may find some room in there to do something a little different that might help you retain people, because I'm assuming pay has something to do with it.
Yeah, it is. We're competing with the other 911 centers in this area and the operations like the law enforcement agencies that have dispatched. So pay is absolutely a factor. We hear about it. And to be honest, I was in the comm center late Friday night talking to my night shift, and I heard what I'd heard before, which is our health insurance is not considered the best. She was happy to work for us. She'd like to be in there, but she was up front and said, yeah, our health insurance could be doing better. So that wasn't a plus for her.
If you could get that information back to us, I think it would be.
By, what do you mean by ramp up?
What does it cost you from when you bring somebody on board? You said it takes 2 months to train them?
Right.
There should be an expense associated with that.
Got it.
And then what you're spending in overtime because of lack of staff.
Got it.
Of course, you well know the pressure also is a factor.
Oh, no, yeah, I know.
As you well know.
Yeah.
And then I think the thing that I would want to make sure, the public knew is that 50% retention rate is probably about the same as what it is nationally.
Well, I can tell you, because I know firsthand that it is an issue all over the place. But you have to start looking at something to figure out how to overcome it.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, Prince, I got a couple of questions. When we talked about maintenance in the department, we had an actual budget spend of $51,000, and then we appropriated $102,000. Then we came back. Actually, so far this year, we only spent $23,000, but you were asking for $94,000.
Yeah, that's a good catch. There's a number of maintenance contracts I'm still working on getting in place. For example, won't name the company, but there's one company that is the manufacturer of our access control system, our camera system, and the fire protection systems. What I'm trying to do is get a contract with this one company to do both the periodic maintenance and the emergency call-outs. Because right now, I don't. The firms we're using can't address all of it. And so some of our systems don't have a maintenance contract at all, and some of the one company I don't think is really proficient. So I do not have all the maintenance contracts in place that I need to have in place is the explanation. So that's on me why we're underspent.
And going back to group insurance, I'm guessing the projection is if you hired the 3 telecom positions, that's the difference in the cost of last year versus next year?
So for the vacant positions, we do budget for family coverage, and then that person that's selected would, select the family coverage. And it's not likely that it's always gonna be that, but we have to make sure that we have enough in the budget if that.
So you didn't just have to come back for a budget amendment for, I get
Well,
it.
or, we may up it too much if they select something, if they select a lower tier.
Correct. Under the capital outlay improvements, you had $10,000.
Yes.
Budgeted.
But I maintain in the budget because we may have to replace a piece of equipment. Some of our equipment costs that much. So I want it budgeted for in the right category, because we could easily have to replace a $3,000 or $4,000 piece of equipment that turned out not to be covered by warranty. We've been pretty successful getting our vendors to cover any equipment that's getting replaced. But that's so I have the budget, the money in there for what is sometimes a very rapid requirement.
My last thing going, and I'm probably gonna ask each fund is this: utilities, not much of a buffer. I mean, you spent $33,000. We know since 2021, utilities have been sky high. You're not considering maybe giving you, like we did previously with the chief, another 20% on top of that? It's just a buffer system. We know the cost of utilities is not going down.
I'm all over that thermostat like you wouldn't believe. Kim and I actually talked about this. I'm projecting a $36,000 bill right now. So I think it's $40,000.
Correct.
So there is a buffer in there, and all I can tell you is I'm
21 was that.
people that work for me will tell you once the bill comes in and I'm showing it to them and we're talking about it and I'm making a copy of it.
It's
So,
significant.
it's probably for everybody. Certainly it was more than I expected when I started the project of creating our own building, 5 or 6 years ago.
I just want to close. Thank you for always being there when I call, answer the questions, get directly to the point. I think other than the fire department, your department is probably the most important when we talk about heart attacks, accidents, being able to have the state-of-the-art technology. Thank you for being on top of that.
I'll pass that on to the call takers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Landry?
I think our concern on the utilities were, at 36, but probably in June or July is when the spike hit the thing, so that might be something. Kimberly, you made a comment about the fees going up. Has the state increased the amount that we control?
No, this was increased under, the council set our fees at 5% of what's called the tariff rate, which you never would have heard of if we didn't have this conversation. AT&T publishes a tariff rate for phone service in the state. Actually, I think there's 3 regions in the state. And the council set it at 5%. We set it, going back in time, and the records are fuzzy. I think we started out at 5% back in 1988, and we never raised it. And I did what I could to cut the budget, and I finally reached the point where we had to increase it. So I increased it. It more or less mirrors inflation since 1988. The home phone fee went from 75 cents a month to $1.25, and of course those are going away. One of my issues I didn't touch on is our home phone fees, residential phone fees are dropping significantly, and even the prepaid phones, which you buy at Walmart, which puzzles me, but they have been dropping for a couple of years, Kim, I think. So I've got a budget for my known fees dropping by about $20,000 to $30,000 a year to reflect those 2 factors. And then the business fee went from $1.25 to $5, which sounds like a lot all at once, but that's about the average for the state, and we hadn't raised it in 34 years.
Good, Mr. Lynch. That's it. Any other questions? Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Greer, you want to finalize?
So calculating the salary adjustment, at the 4%, it's an additional $10,000 to the communications district fund, and then at the 5%, it's $16,000, almost $17,000 annual. And the fund balance, so 22 started with 2.2 million. There is a reported deficit or an expected deficit of right at about $450,000 for fiscal 22. So that brings the fund balance down to 1.8 million, and there is a small surplus of about 60,000 reported for fiscal 23. So the fund balance stays even at about 1.8. So the large deficit is because of the payoff on the debt. You can see that they paid an additional $400,000 towards the principal payment.
Rabies control?
Okay, so rabies control, so, their revenue stream comes from program fees, which are charged to the users, so through the sale of tags, the adoption fees, those sorts of things. But the larger portion of their revenue comes from contributions, the transfer from the health unit fund. We have that currently set in fiscal 23 right at about $300,000. And then the city of New Iberia has been kicking in about $91,000 for the last 2 years. Into this particular fund. And getting back to the health unit transfer, we only transfer what we need. So even though we have it set at $300,000, if they end up not using all of that, we keep that money in health unit in the other fund. So that's why you'll see, some of those larger fluctuations on that line item.
If you don't mind, just give your name and your title. I apologize to the audience. I should have done that now that we have the camera.
Erica, Rabies Control Manager. So I didn't change that much in the budget from last year. You will see that there's one full-time position that has been eliminated. We tried to get a full-timer for about 8 months and never got even one application that we could approve. So instead we put that full-time position became a part-time position. So that's why you'll see in that line item that it went up to 60%. But that was the only change, and it was so that we could have an extra set of hands. Let's see. And the main project that we wanted to do next year was to deal with our roofing. We were going to seal the roof. It doesn't look like we're going to have to change it, but we do need to seal it because we are having some leaks. And I did put that as $45,000 just because I don't know what they're going to find once they get up there.
Any questions?
I do. Miss Erica, I got a couple of questions.
Yeah.
The last time you came before us, we talked about how critical and important training is, and I don't see an adjustment to the training line item.
We, in the travel
correct?
In training, we put $1,000 there so that we could go to LACA training. That is for me to go as well as the animal control officers.
$1,000
And that's-
is enough for travel and,
I'm pretty sure it's just right there in Alexandria. And we can also take classes there for chemical capture where we can actually start euthanizing at the shelter and save us a good chunk of money because we're having to go to the vet for everything.
okay. I noticed there was no increase in farm and medical at all, there, no anticipated cost in any of those products?
No, we're still doing fine with the budget that we have, so we just carried that over.
So my last two questions is obviously we have the transfer for the 45,000 in the buildings, right? Is that correct, Kim? Buildings is it for the roof repairs is gonna come from buildings, building and maintenance, or is that coming out of their actual budget?
That's coming out of health unit.
Is there any reason why?
We've always only accounted for this fund, relative to the public health.
I get that, but we've also done repairs to that building where we've used public building maintenance fund.
Yeah, so public building has not provided transfers in the past to the rabies fund. We have the regular buildings that we account for, and we, done some, I guess, extraordinary, things. Health unit, rabies is not one of them. It's not to say that it's not acceptable, it's just that, we've handled it this way in the past.
So I know it's been, and I'm not gonna go into full detail, but the floor issue, have we taken care of that?
Yes, that's gonna be done before the end of the year. We're just waiting on, the actual date of start. They're starting at the jail first and coming to us after.
So the $35,000 is just strictly for the
floor.
The floor improvements?
Yes, and then, we also had, money set aside for a quarantine building, which we will get as soon as we have the actual, amount for the flooring.
Thank you.
But all of that'll be done, before the end of the year.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Hold on. Any other questions? Vanaway? I do have one. It's not so much a budget question,
Okay.
but your intake, because it could impact you. Did it start to go down yet, or no? No?
This is the worst the United States has ever seen in the history of our country when it comes to animal shelters. Right now, we've taken in 1,300 animals. Right now,
Wow.
today. And we've gotten over 800 out to rescue. About 200 went to different adoptions here locally. And then we do have to euthanize at times because if they're aggressive, what I say is if I can't have them in my own home, they're not going to someone else's. And I'm not going to take that risk. And, but yeah, I have a stack about this thick right now of owner surrenders
Yeah.
and stray dogs. And most of it is city, and we have a good amount in the parish now too, but the city is more of an issue at this point.
Mr. Gotcha?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, if I can, just to let Kim know that I plan to make the first amendment to make an amendment from that 45,000 to be taken from public buildings and transferred into that fund. Because as you know, the health unit, we're gonna get to that point, that 45,000 can be very critical
Right.
support of the operations over the next 2 fiscal years. I'm good.
Mr. Olivier?
I guess I have a question for the administration. Is the city paying their fair share for rabies control? Based on the intake?
We have a meeting scheduled right now with the administration of the city.
Okay.
They're paying 91,000 right now, but I guess if she would give you the percentage breakdown, you would see that the city have actually a higher rate of animals coming into our shelter than the parish.
It's
Okay.
51%.
Okay, so we're looking at a possible renegotiating on their share?
Yes,
Okay.
we're looking at renegotiating period.
All right, thank you. I'm good.
Thank you. Mr. Gotcha?
Maybe Larry can answer. The CEA, this 91,000, is that the new figure that we talked about in the new CEA? We're getting the dollars, but we haven't signed the CEA with them?
That's it. Actually, if I'm not mistaken, the last CEA is probably for 51,000, if I'm not mistaken, something like that. But we're trying to get the 91, so we haven't signed.
The
it.
one that we initially signed before the one that we negotiate or
Yes.
talked about last year?
Yeah.
All right. Anyone else? Thank you. Ms. Segura?
Okay, so the salary increase, calculated at the 4% would, cost an additional $2,000, and then at the 5%, it would be about $3,700. So fiscal '22 started with about $13,000 worth of fund balance. You can see we have it set at, zero, surplus and deficit. Same thing for next year, because of the way that we do the transfers in, so the fund balance remains at the 13,000.
All right. Mosquito abatement?
So the mosquito fund operates on a quarter cent sales tax. That sales tax is collected parish-wide. It's a renewable tax. It goes up for renewal every 10 years. It's actually on the ballot later this year. So the tax call is actually for mosquito first, and then the surplus distribution is required by the tax call as well to be distributed to the parish and the municipalities. It's actually based on the census population each 10 years, and it's for drainage purposes. So that money is surplused out on, I think the tax call requires it to be done on May 1st, or by May 1st of each year, so we typically do it in the late April. And you can see, annual revenue's been approximately 3.4 million the last, 2 years.
Name and
Thank you,
title,
Kim.
please. Name and title.
Herff Jones, Director, Iberia Parish Mosquito Control.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, I've been coming before this group for quite a few years, reflecting on those 16 years or so that we've been here. And one of the things that came to mind was I really thought that, Iberia Parish is very fortunate to have a full-fledged mosquito control. It obviously is a necessity living on the southwest coast of Louisiana. But if you think about it, out of the 60-plus parishes we have, there's only 16 parishes that have a full integrated mosquito control program that does surveillance, larvicide, ground spraying, and has aerial capacity. And we're one of those programs. And so, obviously, I'm very proud of that, and I hope that that's a message that you can carry to your constituents as we talk about and as they hear about the tax renewal that's going to be starting early voting October 25 to the 1st, and it will be on the November 8th ballot to renew our tax. It's not a new tax, it's the renewal of what we have. And it does, quite honestly, afford for us to have top-notch program and support the parish in a very unique way to address drainage issues and in turn reduce the propagation of mosquitoes. And as of from 2006 to 2016, we're about at a $30 million mark for surplus dollars. So our program, our board feel that we've done our part as being good stewards of the parish revenues. I'm going to review a little bit of the program, then some of our major expense categories. And for the new members, I'm going to take a little time out, Mr. Ronsonet, and talk about the airplane and how we have our own aircraft and how we afford it. And then I'll save the Manning chart to the end, but there's been some very encouraging comments so far. Let's see if I can get this to work. All right. So operationally, our program over the past 3 years, we're somewhere around 900 to almost 1 million acres per year treated from the ground and the air. It's very difficult to explain to the public how unique each and every year is for mosquito control. Folks are like, well, what's the mosquitoes are going to be like this year? Is it going to be bad or is it going to be good? Well, all I can tell you is let's wait and see how much rain we get. In our rainy season, if you recall, this year was pretty stout. And our mosquitoes on the other side of that rainy season were pretty stout. So each year is a new year, and we pride ourselves on the flexibility to be able to address that situation as it changes from year to year. Along the basis of our program is the surveillance. We have to know what type of mosquito is out there, where those mosquitoes are, and how many they are. We sample hundreds and thousands of mosquitoes throughout the year. And we submit nearly 4,000 samples to be tested by genetic testing at LSU School of Veterinary Medicine. And that's where you hear me send out press release or hear me talking, to the public or sending messages to you all. And we need to be careful about what we're doing outside. Those mosquitoes are carrying that virus around. And one person that has the most serious form can not only expire, but if they do survive, could have lifelong issues that are just unsurmountable for one family to be able to take care of that particular person. It's unimaginable. In addition to the ground and aerial spraying, we service on average about 1,100 private citizens requests per year. And that's if you call, we're going to be there same day in most cases. In all public events, football, soccer, crawfish ball, sugarcane fest, crawfish fest, gumbo fest, anything that's going on, we make preparations to handle that. Residential treatments are very different from the ground spraying or the aerial spraying where we're trying to control the base population. The residential mosquitoes are a little different character, and we do our best to address that as long as folks give us a call and let us know they need some help. So this may be, some small type for everyone, but I did want to point out, just highlight some areas that I hope Mr. Gotchasan will point out and ask me about again. But our major spending categories are the same. When it comes to aerial chemical and ground chemical, so far as our overhead for the office and stuff like that, we've done our best to account for those increase in cost as it relates to utilities, parts and pieces for our repair and maintenance of our equipment, parts and pieces to repair and maintain our vehicles and our buildings as well. Those things have become more expensive and harder to get. And so we did our best to try to account for that. Our lawn services, we went through a proposal process, and that actually is going to be an increase for next year. And again, everything is in anticipation of what might cost, what the cost we feel, anticipated cost that we feel we're going to be faced with for the overhead and operation of our program just day to day. You'll see travel and training, an increase in that particular line item. Travel costs have increased inordinately, strangely enough. And also our people, we have just received notification from our state agency, who is the federal enforcement agency for EPA, the rules in which we conduct our business under. They would be required to have additional licensure that they don't have now. And so they will need to have these licensures to function going forward. Does anybody have any questions on any of these line items, or should I just keep going, Mr. Ronson?
Keep going.
Could you just briefly state, or am I going too far?
Go right ahead.
It's in regards to what you give back to the parish in the dollar amount in drainage. Is that in your presentation?
Not specifically. Kim will speak to it in a little bit.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure it was brought
You should
up.
see it on your printout. There is a two fund balance.
saw it.
Yeah, there's two fund balances that this budget carries, which is unique from all the rest. One is what is going to be distributed for May 1, and the other fund balance is what we are expecting it to be for the next year. Okay, for some of the new members, we did we're very fortunate to apply and be granted a federal grant from CDC to acquire our own aircraft. And this is what got us to that point. We had been through, 12 seasons of doing contract aerial applications, which we most desperately need. We can't control mosquitoes without it. And we reached the point to where our budget number was about as high as we wanted it to go. And the contract costs, which we were facing with, were going to blow through the roof on that in the years to come. And so we did our research. We found out what it would actually cost us to operate in-house program. That's in the green. And again, with the grant that we were awarded, we were able to acquire the aircraft itself, its systems, its outfitting were all paid for without any expenditure of public funds. And what's unique in this particular arrangement is that our neighbor, who we have shared contract services with since 2006, Vermilion Parish, was willing to enter into a cooperative endeavor with us. And so we share the aircraft, we share the responsibility of the upkeep of the aircraft, and we share the expense, if you will, outside of our own particular operating expense. So that affords us the luxury to where, if you see our budget by ourselves was about $150,000 a year, in shared costs with Vermilion, it turns out to be $90,000 a year. So it also becomes even more affordable for us to have our own aircraft, to be in control of our own destiny, to be able to spray when it's right for us to spray, and not necessarily get that phone call from a contractor saying, oh, well, there's a little rain between you and where we are in Iberia, and there's also somebody that's going to pay us $2 an acre for 500,000 acres, then you're 20,000 acres. And so that was really beneficial to us. Yes, Mr. Napier?
Just a question on the plane. So, yeah, I see you budgeting 150.
Mm-hmm.
And in 21, if I'm correct, we spent 88.
Yeah.
And this year, almost 10 months in, we only spent 18.
Right.
Just if you could touch on that.
I will. I was going to show that out to you in detail,
Okay.
but the reason for that is, going in, we had solid projections of what it would cost to operate this particular aircraft as best that we could determine under normal operating hours. And as I mentioned before, the mosquito season is different, from year to year. And our project started in 2019. Our project came to a screeching halt in 2020. So by the time the year 2021 came around, it was only about 1 or 2 months after we got everything tested, calibrated, ready to go, that we were able to use it in 21. And we had zero maintenance costs, zero overhead costs in that half a season or a few months that we actually used the aircraft in 21. This year will be our first full season using the aircraft, and we're doing our best to capture all the particular costs, parts, the AP cost, the fuel. We'll actually be able to see exactly how much fuel we're using. And again, every mosquito year is very different. So we've got to do our best to anticipate our costs, Mr. Napier, and it's never going to, unfortunately, we won't be able to get it down to the dollar. If we did it like that, then we wouldn't be able to use it appropriately in the event of a disease outbreak or hurricane or mosquito
So you
need.
think you're going to hit that 150 this year?
We still have quite a few outstanding. I don't anticipate that
Okay.
this year. There will be unexpended funds, and as usual, all unexpended funds go to that surplus line item.
Correct.
So you don't, the taxpayers don't lose any money, the government doesn't lose any money, but we do our best to protect our citizens and serve our citizens.
Thank you.
So with that, our project is complete. From taken down to the skins and completely rebuilt inside and for the most part outside as well, a new paint job. At the top right, you'll see that in operation, actually during operational hours. Mr. Napier, this will some of the items that you pointed out, what our actual was for 21, and again, that was not a full season of operation. 20, the project came to a standstill. We needed time in 21 to actually complete the project, so that's really just a partial expenditures for the year outside of the insurance, which we know what that cost is. That insurance cost will decline the number of years that we have safe operation. We will capture our AP, which is airframe and power plant, basically the aircraft's mechanic and pilot services in one line item. And our operational items will include any parts, pieces, and fuel from there. We still intend to, continue to capture, better identify those costs as we have experience. And those numbers will look much better for you. Lastly, there's been several very encouraging comments this evening. Our rationale and our request, from the Mosquito Abatement District is that our employees are highly trained and more than cherished, but they're very difficult to find. We've had a difficult time acquiring part-time seasonal employees and holding those employees. Those are the guys that are driving the trucks at night. Those are the guys that are walking the roadside ditches. Those are the guys that are walking the fields and treating the flooded swales. So it's very important for us to be competitive. Our full-time folks, every time a year passes by, it seems like there's another certification, there's another scrutiny, there's another credential that you have to be able to meet, federal and state regulations. So our folks are way behind the curve, way behind their colleagues, and we'll just beg that you will consider a pay increase to catch these guys up to where they can start out from ground zero. Don't fear, neither one of these pilots are certified or will be flying the Mosquito aircraft over your homes. You may recognize them. Please take a moment, and come out and see us. We're always there, 8:30 to 4:30, Monday through Friday. And, probably if you come by when I'm not there, my employees will probably tell you, all my secrets and stuff like that. Yeah. Any questions?
Mr. Broussard?
Apologize for my voice ahead of time. Could you back up a couple of slides to the line items that you had, a couple more?
That's how he flies.
Huh?
That's how he flies. That's why he's not flying.
On the chemicals, 56, 1700 in
Yes.
the aero chemicals, and then we're actually the actual and the
Yes, sir.
year-to-date and the 22 projections.
Right.
Those numbers aren't the same numbers that are a few slides ahead unless I'm looking at different numbers.
Right. Those are probably actual year-to-date that have been reconciled when we started the budget process in September, Mr. Broussard. And so that could easily be different.
So they jumped up
Yeah.
significant in the last
Yeah,
month, I
it
guess.
easily could be different, from what I prepared, fairly recently. So far as, now we have a separate line item for aerial chemical, and we have a separate line item for ground-based chemicals. Right here.
Or did you ask him about the use of this?
Yeah,
Right.
I'm trying to make sense
So
of
if you
it.
heard what he said earlier, you don't really see mosquitoes until after a huge rain event when it after it stops raining. So that their spray activity picks up quite a bit.
Yeah, for a whole month, we didn't spray at all, and then now the month
Right.
after,
It-
which is the last 6 weeks, we
Yes.
probably spraying.
And we
constantly.
certainly,
So it
you know,
jumped up
right.
that significantly in the last month and a half, I guess.
Again, you're right. Each mosquito season is different. And another thing to know, Mr. Broussard, we're prohibited from spraying typically during the winter months. The temperature has to be 55 degrees or warmer for us to use the chemical, the restricted use chemicals that are registered for our use.
Mr. Olivier?
Yeah, the surplus of vehicles, are we successful in allowing other governmental agencies to utilize those vehicles?
Everybody, I think, poor Erica's left, but yeah, every spare vehicle we've had has gone straight to rabies. And when we identify a surplus vehicle, Parish has, first right of refusal on those before we let those out to the public.
Okay, so we're supporting the other governmental agencies and their transportation needs.
Absolutely.
Good, thank you.
Mr. Gottschalk, you had something?
Yeah, Mr. Jones, I want to talk about the process of the contingency in the fund. At what point do we determine that the contingency is not needed or utilized, then we put that back into fund balance, or does that actually go to part of the figures to the municipality on the disbursements?
In my mind, I look for the end of hurricane season.
Okay.
Yep. Now that's not written in the ordinance that's related to that, because the ordinance specifically says disease outbreak, hurricane, flood event, tropical event. To that. Those are the circumstances in which we can use it. That's got to go before my board first, and then I'm typically going to come to you guys to let you know about it as well. And then at that point in time, it goes back. And what it helps us with, Mr. Gotcha saying, is we are the first guys in line when it comes to, Air Force aircraft post hurricanes kind of tend to end up around here. Well, that's not by any mistake. That's because we do our FEMA process very precisely as it relates to that. So those funds are typically, reimbursed fully. But if the state government decides not to buy in to that 25%, then we have the funds to be able to take care of our people so they can recover and get back and can afford that massive treatment over our entire parish, which is typically needed post a significant hurricane.
So that figure that we're looking at as far as the disbursements to the municipalities, that
That is-
definitely changes, because once you determine that contingency is no longer needed, that goes
Yeah.
in the formula for them receiving
Right.
that, correct?
But the circumstances in which that's used outside of a disease outbreak is typically they're going to be reimbursed by FEMA reimbursement.
Got it.
Yeah.
Awesome job in presenting. The only thing is some of the members, I would just point out, if you looked at the parish-wide drainage amount that we've received in '21 was $932,000, and we're projected $611,000. So that actually, and again, we shouldn't hope and pray that we get that money, because the voters paid it for a reason, to get mosquito control, but that's a significant hit to that drainage fund, $300,000. And the total disbursement in '21 was $1.9 million, and expected to the municipalities is $1.2 million in '23.
Yeah.
So that's almost $700,000 drop. But it's not because the revenues aren't there, it's because of the cost to maintain and operate the system, correct?
Well, I would say this, Mr. Gotcha, saying there hasn't been a year since 2006 that the program hasn't identified an additional cost savings to
Correct.
close that gap.
I don't disagree. I think I was against the plane, and now to see how effective the plane can be at the cost that some of us thought would have been maybe double that,
Yeah. Yeah. So, Mr. Brown.
I agree.
Because first we were planning on buying that plane ourselves.
Yes, sir. There was. I was pretty determined that was a part of our Horizon plan, but you.
We'll never reach that point.
No.
Not
Yes.
from us.
But the partnership with our neighbor, that
Makes
was
it
a
even
plus.
better.
Absolutely.
No,
And
but the thing is, when it was
donated to us, is the thing.
Yeah.
I mean,
Thank you, Mr. Jones.
You're welcome.
Mr. Sonia?
I think to your credit, they typically, this thing outperforms the projected budget every year.
Say again?
It typically outperforms the projected numbers, doesn't it?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, and if you look at this, the original budget for 2022 is 593,000, and they actually paid out almost $1 million. So if you go back each year and look at it,
You talking about the disbursements to the municipalities?
yeah, it's typically,
In 22, you saying?
Not in 22.
I'm not following. Come back again?
what's the
I-
original?
I'm looking,
He's saying 611.
that's projected.
Yeah.
I'm looking at the actuals. If you look at the actuals, in 21, it was 1.927 million. And then in 21, and then projected in
You
23
looking
is
at
actually
Public
one,
Works?
sorry?
Where you at? Ron?
If you look on Munis, page 3 at the bottom, before you get to capital improvements, you can look at the total disbursements to the municipalities. So on the 21, if you take those figures between the town of Delcom, city of Jeanerette, the village, and the rest of the municipalities, we had a total disbursement of 1.927 million. And then the projected department disbursements is 1.232 million in 23.
That's what I'm saying, though. Typically they projected it one thing, and we normally get more than the projection.
Sure, well, that's why I was brought up the contingency part.
Okay.
Good. Anybody else?
Yeah.
Mr. Landon?
You know, I was there when Herb and them were starting to look at the plane, and I travel the state a lot, and I'm in some areas that when it gets to be sunset, you really got to get away. And I mean, I think this is the greatest thing. What Herb was talking about when we contracted it out, we had a session that the guy just pretty much said, I think it was the East Coast, South Carolina, he was
Yeah.
taking off, and it didn't matter what we had to say about it. And can you imagine him right now wondering if we're going to pay him or he was going to Florida? I feel sorry for the people in Florida, but I don't think he'd be spraying. And we just had a press release back October 4th, so he may
Right.
not be in the area to take care of it.
Right.
And Vermillion is really working wonderful with it. It's, you know, a good working relationship. And what I would suggest is the guys, Herb was kind enough in our first year to take us on a tour of the place. And it'd be nice to have your employees, but it was good to have you show us around. We saw the plane.
Did you get to fly in the plane?
You know, they had the bucket of mosquitoes. It must have been about 10 million in there.
Yes, sir.
And how they, you know, go through the system. I mean, it's what we do. We got to watch this thing. I would suggest anybody that hasn't, try to get with her. This is one of the pluses for Iberia Parish.
That's a new business plan, bucket of mosquitoes, we're gonna sell them.
Thank you, Mr. Paul.
That's the end of the presentation, Mr. Jones?
Yes, that's all I have, Mr.
Thank you.
Wilson. Thank you.
Mr. Gurley, you'd like to close?
Okay, so the 4% salary increase adjustment, is right at about $4,600 as opposed to the 5% will be, is calculated to be about $7,700. So relative to the surplus distribution, 2021, $1,904,000 was surplus. 2022, $1,966,000. And then it's calculated for fiscal '23, and it is reduced by that $500,000. That number is budgeted at $1,208,000. And so the difference between the 1966 and the $1,200,000 is, you know, about $700 and something thousand. Large portion of that is attributable to the $500,000 contingency. And, you know, those calculations are done by my office, typically after we close the after we close the books. So usually around beginning of March, like we kind of like know, well, probably about mid-March, we know those numbers. And then usually in April, you'll see the budget adjustment hit the council agenda. And then, you know, that's when we get ready for that. So fund balance wise, beginning of '22, right at about 1.9, there is a projected deficit attributable to the surplus distribution, $700,000. So that brings the fund balance down to $1,200,000. And then with those numbers for fiscal '23, revenues and expenses, it's a projected deficit for about $197,000. So that brings the fund balance down to right at about $1 million.
Public library?
Okay, so the library fund. The library fund is supported with an ad valorem millage that the levy is currently set at 3.50 mils. The maximum that can be levied is 5.85 mils. This tax is renewable every 10 years. It currently expires in 2024. We have 4 of them that are renewable, that all expire in 2024, which is
Right
soon, soon. So I guess at some point, maybe during the budget process, we can start talking about what y'all have plans, relative to the election process and, you know, putting it on a ballot maybe early enough in the event that, you know, if by chance we would need two ballots to get those.
Putting it up for the tax.
Speculation.
Well, yeah, I mean, you've seen it happen in neighboring communities, you know, not to be, negative Nelly, but like, I don't know, you know, so. Okay, so, revenue-wise, we're looking at, you know, somewhere around $2.1 million across the years, that's generated by the library to cover those operating expenses.
Kathy, library. You know that by now. So, we don't, there's not a whole lot of change with anything. I did what was what was suggested as far as increases. So there is the 2.5 increase for personal services. We did also increase the group insurance across the board. The repairs and maintenance for the main library is the $50,000 we always put in. I did not put in for any particular projects. If you look on the capital improvement list, I think there was only 8 servers that was listed, and that's because it's end of life for the servers that are in the system currently. I don't really have any building repairs planned for next year. There's always an increase in insurance, so we did that, building insurance. Everything else was pretty much the same. Yeah, everything else was pretty much the same. I was listening to what Mr. Gashasan was saying about the 20% increase to utilities, and maybe Kimberly, you can make that adjustment just at all the branches. I did not allow for that, but that's probably a very good idea. For Koto, the building's paid for, so it's just a matter of, is that Koto is next? Yeah. Yeah. So there's no more engineering, no more architect. It's all the same. It all goes back to the original numbers. For Lydia, it's the same thing. I didn't put in for any repairs. All of these places do have room for a little bit of repairs, but quite frankly, I'm not going to be here for the whole year, so I didn't want to leave it for somebody else. At Delcom, well, let's see. Why is there money in Delcom? Oh, Delcom is the $10,000. Mr. Shealy and the library board and everybody worked really hard with the Vermillion Parish government, and we were able to negotiate one set amount that we would pay, but we would still own half of the library. It would be $10,000, and we would not have them calling us to say it needs this and it needs that and all that stuff. So we're just paying them a flat fee, which I personally think is a bargain. I already know that since the agreement, they had to put on a $20,000 roof, which would have been that price for us right off the bat. So I am appreciative of what happened there. At Generette, we do have some repairs that need to be made there. If I can make the adjustments to this year's budget and get it done before the end of the year, I think that's what I'm going to do. I'll work with Kimberly on that. so this probably won't be the last time you see me. Lorville, just goes back to what the prices were before we built the building. Parkview, as you probably passed, Parkview and St. Peter have tarps on the roof. I am in the process of getting 3 quotes for the repairs for the roof. It got to the point where we just couldn't put it off anymore. I am waiting for 1 more quote, which they promised me today, but it didn't come. I'll call in the morning to see where I can get that, and then those 2 buildings will be re-roofed.
If you don't, can I stop you right there?
Yeah.
So let's talk about that. That's what we've been talking about for the last couple of years,
Yeah.
those.
Right.
Did we, I know we had, at one point, you wanted to go with a standing seam metal roof, and then we talked about how the difference in cost was between that and just a regular shingle roof. Is that,
We're doing
what are you
shingles.
asking for?
We're doing shingles.
You doing the shingle?
A lot of the decking is, I don't speak roofing,
No,
but
I got you.
a lot of the decking,
Yeah, the
and I'm
deck-
so proud of myself, I can.
No, that's
actually,
good. That's an
um,
actual
They,
thing.
they said a lot of it's damaged at both buildings. And remember, we have the little storage building in behind St. Peter.
Right.
So that roof is also damaged. So it probably wouldn't have been as expensive as it's going to be, but the decking they need to go all the way down to
And how much money you have for those 2 buildings?
120,000.
Yeah, so you should be able to do, hopefully those bids will come back, you should be able to do both of those.
Yeah, it's
for-
looking promising.
For less than that.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Sure.
What's your effect on?
You want to continue on?
That's it for Parkview and St. Peter. I don't, we did have, I noticed that we don't have the thing in capital improvement for the 8 servers anymore.
Yeah, it's there.
It is it? Oh, it's just not on mine.
50,000.
Okay, and that's it for me. Have any questions?
Any questions?
I do have a question about those servers. Is that for the whole system together?
Well, at the 2 larger branches, they have their own. And then we hold the servers at the main library. I think there's a total of 8.
Okay.
There's 6 of them at the main library. So we're sort of like the hub, and then the spider webs go out.
We talked last year about a smart lab. I think if you remember that, we talked about having maybe a lab that we could have people come in and, get online, fill out applications. It was going to be a smart lab. I don't know the technical name that we use, but y'all were looking into that. Have we made any legwork on that?
People use the public computers for that. We
Okay.
got private tables so that there's more privacy.
Okay.
And that seems to be working. Nobody's complained.
And your patron numbers, are they about relatively the same or improved?
They're good.
Okay.
Because I think we always do our best during a recession, because people have to drop certain things that are considered luxury items from their budget in order that they can eat and keep rent and whatever. So our numbers have gone up because you can get movies and books and databases and, and you can come out and fill in applications.
And Ms.
Uh,
Cathy, the only reason I question that is I know the government, the federal government's putting dollars to the side for low income families to be able to make it affordable for those that have it at their house. Access, even the school boards now been getting on board with kids doing virtual learning. So I wasn't sure if that was going to affect the numbers or not. But it's
Yeah.
good to hear that the participation still.
Yeah, in fact, we're kind of proud of this. There is someone, I don't want to name names, he was homeless, and he used our public computers, and he got his college degree.
Good.
And he got a job. So, yay.
Good job.
He did. So, that's
Yeah,
wonderful.
I have no negative about the budget. Only thing is, I think Mr. Napier brought it up before just to make sure that we take the integrity of the roof serious and get it done, because last year it was in really bad shape. I mean, my kid goes there often, and I can tell you Main Street at least was,
Yeah, well.
seen its better day.
Local contractors you're dealing with? Kathy?
I got names from Michael Broussard.
Yeah, which
I
hopefully it's
got-
local guys.
Well,
Because if the
since,
decking's bad,
Uh-huh.
you definitely want to change that before you start putting
Yeah.
underlayment and
Well,
then the
I
shingles
got
on top.
2 quotes, and I, because I knew the term, I asked, is there decking in it? And They both assured me there was, and Michael said when I have the third one, I'll send it over to him and he'll make sure it's apples and apples.
Apples to apples.
Yeah,
It's perfect.
so-
Thank you, Ms.
Mr.
Kathy.
Yeah, Kathy, y'all do a great job with programs throughout the year at
Thank
your
you.
library system.
Thank you.
The budget allows you to maintain those same programs you've been giving throughout the year?
Yeah, I move money around, you know,
Okay.
so the databases are getting more expensive because databases are the way things are going now, you know. People are reading books on Kindles. I mean, there's still plenty of books going out that are real books, but, you know, the databases sort of give a more current view of the nonfiction things. You know, once a book is published and it's a nonfiction book about, I don't know, something that's current events, it's already old news before it makes the hardcover book. But databases are very current, so a lot of the students have been using those things. We are getting ready to do what Lafayette does with great success. We're planning a community read. We're in talks with what book we'll pick, and the whole parish will read the same book, and we'll have some kind of event for it. We're going with a youth book, something teenish, because we're trying to get those kids in. You know, when they're little, they come to story times and they come to, you know, all the things their parents bring them to. And then when they're adults, they find us again. But we kind of lose the teens, and I know that because I have two in my house. God help me. But I know because, you know, and then we lose them in the teen years, and then we ask them as adults to vote for our tax. And we've lost them during those times. So we try as hard as we can to get those teenagers in. I mean, we know they're our future voters. And so, you know, there is a value to that.
Yeah, I want to compliment you on a lot of your outside services you provide. Even my business, I use the library a lot because there's a lot of resources that I can tap into through the library system that I wouldn't normally have that access to unless I had to pay for it
Right.
on a private level.
I'm trying to redo the library cards. I'm noticing how many kids don't have parents that can bring them to the library to get a library card. So I'm trying to think of a way that they can still access us through the internet. And so I'm considering a digital card that maybe we could disperse more freely to the schools. It's been asked of us, and it was time for us to think out of the box. So we are considering that.
Thank you, Kathy.
Sure.
Mr.
Anybody
Broussard?
else?
Talk about thinking outside the box. Several years ago, I went to one of the Lafayette Parish libraries, and there was a really cool 3D scanning
Yeah.
apparatus
3D
there.
printer.
You could maybe draw something, and then this little those are the kinds of things I think would help with maybe some of the younger,
Yeah,
or
could be.
those teens, those preteens, where they're using their imagination to create something.
Yeah, we do a lot of STEAM and STEM problems, and now there's STREAM, of course, you know, the reading. So we try to incorporate as much education as we can, but we try to keep it fun because we don't want to compete with the classroom. We want to help the classroom. So yeah,
Sure.
absolutely.
Any other questions? Mr.
I had a
Saunders?
comment, actually. Did I understand you're retired?
I am.
You're not, you're kind of soft-spoken, Kathy, and I'm
Yeah.
half deaf, so.
I am.
That's right. I just want to tell you this. The opportunity that I've had to work around you has been pleasant. I know this is not always the funnest room to come in, but you've always held your composure. I think you did the right thing for the community, and I appreciate everything that you've done. So congratulations on your
Absolutely.
retirement.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Gurr?
And I need my library card renewed, so we'll.
I knew there was something you after.
Okay, so the salary adjustment calculated at the 4% would cost an additional $14,000, and then at 5%, it's approximately $23,000 for the library fund. Fund balance wise for fiscal '22, we started the year at $6.9 million. There is a deficit, a projected deficit of about $366,000, so that'll bring the fund balance down to right at about $6.6 million. And then for fiscal '23, the projected deficit is 405, so that'll bring the fund balance down to about 6.1.
The health insurance, what percentage y'all budgeted?
A 5% increase?
5%?
Yeah.
Okay.
So sometimes you're gonna see some larger, and I didn't notice it if it's in this one. Yeah, so this one's actually reporting a decline. And so what happens is sometimes during the year, we have people that move from, say, family coverage to single coverage. Well, that's gonna be a reported decline. And then if we have vacancies budgeted there, typically instead of like pre-selecting or trying to anticipate, what these people would select, we budget that based on family coverage. That way we have enough cushion. Because, if we budgeted at single and then they want family, well, then we don't have enough. So you're going to see, and typically your funds that have larger populations of employees, you're going to see those fluctuations there. If there's only a handful of employees and you don't have any turnover, you're going to just notice that it's a 5% increase.
Thank you. Recreation and playground.
So recreation is actually supported with a sales tax. That sales tax is actually a 1/4 cent. This tax, different from Mosquito's renewable tax, is a perpetual tax. So that tax, recreation's tax, is collected in the whole parish minus the city limits, municipal boundaries. They are also supported by user charges. You got a large portion of user charges that are at the RV park. They do rent buildings, and then they have day camp revenues. So just like the regular revenues bring in right at about 1.8, and then you'll see the fluctuating revenues through the usage at the RV facility.
Good evening. My name is Tammy, and I'm the director of Iberia Parish Recreation. I provided you with a recap. Thank you. We did take Kim's suggestion, and we increased our sales tax for next year and this year to 1.8. Day camp, we actually are going to be making it more quality than quantity. We tried going up with the numbers this year, and it just didn't work out too well. We had a lot of trouble with the kids, and we are having trouble getting employees. The quality of people who are getting in just don't match the numbers. So we're going to go back down to our lower numbers, maybe about 130 this year for day camp. On the expenses, I broke them down. We did increase, we took into consideration for chemicals, electricity, and water for the aisle, and the chemicals and electricity for the rec side. We saw, if you notice on our budget, like 20% increase for electrical. Chemicals were 3 times the cost of what we paid last year. So the budget was hit really hard there. So we did have some adjustments there. And the aisle, it seems to be doing pretty well. We'll probably break out even by the end of the year. So, if you have any questions on anything else, I made little notes on what it covers. We didn't put the 2.5 personal service. So.
Any questions?
Yeah.
Mr.
I do,
Gossison,
Mr.
I know you have a
Chairman.
question.
Paul, he's something else, dude. I guess I got a couple of questions. Looking at the proposed budget from the administration compared to yours here, it says the proposed budget is $423,800 in 2022 in the RV park, correct? Is that this is income, correct?
On the revenue side,
Correct.
yes.
And then looks like it kind of stays flat, maybe a $50,000 increase in 2023. And then when I look at the expenditures, I see 483,250, which you kind of said it stayed flat. And then you see in 2023 proposed 629,000.
We are anticipating, let me go back and look to see. Did I do that? Let me just Yeah. Um,
Because the projections in the budget presented to by the administration shows a projected revenue of RV rentals at 390 and then 10,000, which is 400,000, which is about $83,000 short of what your projection is in your budget. And that could be that when this was reported, you still had some of September and October. Is this?
may have.
It's just that's a, I mean, you looked at 2021, the actual revenue was 504,000 for the RV park. And then now we're projecting in 2023, 395,000. That's a pretty big decrease. Can you tell us why? Is it?
Okay, are you looking, maybe I'm looking at the wrong thing, 'cause I have on my revenue side, I'm projecting 482.5, is that what you're looking at?
Well, 482.5 is in the 2022 projected year on yours. I'm going back to what was presented to us, and I guess I should go back to the actual number that was taken in 21 was 504,000, and then again, even in your proposal is 483,000, which is almost $90,000 difference from the proposed budget towards yours, which is still substantially down. I mean, 504,000
And I think we are on target.
to meet 2021 actual revenue.
Well, I think if you add all these,
All the golf
all
carts
those line
and everything
items,
else, yeah.
entries, golf court, I came up to right at 480.
Well, no, I mean, I'm not even adding that. I mean, if I did that, then the revenue's much higher in 2021, am I right?
Go from 24 to here.
Correct,
That's
but
about 480.
look at 21, the
Oh, I
RV
see,
rental
okay.
is 504,000 itself.
Right.
Well, because to me, I mean, that's the bulk of the income there anyways, is at least close to 85%.
Yeah, please keep in mind that we actually have rentals on the books that are vouchers that we
Okay.
won't see revenue from. They're gonna use the facility, but your rent, they've already paid it, and they paid it in a previous year.
Okay.
So that could be part of it. And then rainy seasons make a difference. You know, like if we have, if it rains come Wednesday, people call in. They don't wanna come to the.
Let me ask you, your dependency has been very heavily when it comes to being snowbirds, those that are living there full-time. Do we have an accurate count right now who's out there full-time that will be in the winter,
Yeah, well, I spoke to Spike and he said he expects about 20 of them to stay.
which is good?
Yes, very good.
Yeah.
It costs for them to stay, but it also helps with the electrical bill.
Okay, I've got two more questions, and I think I'm done. As far as the capital improvement projections, you have hard surface resurface project. Can you explain more about that?
We would like to do a hard surface on the tennis courts, basketball courts, put in some cornhole, courts, I
Well, the
guess.
cornhole's got an addition in the capital improvement of 20,000.
Right, and I did get a price. I'm right under that to get all the parks, at least a set.
And the playground structures, is this in various parks, the
Various
150,000?
parks, yes.
So it's not just in one particular
No, it's
park?
gonna be various parks.
Thank you very much, appreciate it.
Mr. Olivia, you had something.
We've been budgeting for a bathroom in the Grand Merit Park for the last few years. Where we are with that?
The contract, Michelle spoke to the contractor. He's picking up the drawings, going to the fire marshal, and then we should go to permit and get moving. We've had issues with getting quotes, like everyone is. You can't get prices, you know, so we finally got re-estimates.
That'll be done in this year's budget, or that'll be carried over to next year's budget?
We're hoping that it's this year. They'll get, you know,
Because I didn't see it in next year's budget, so,
yeah, I mean, if needed, we'll carry it over, but we're thinking that we'll get it done.
okay, thank you.
Mr. Trohan?
You have anything in your budget for the tennis courts at Willowwood to
about the
We
lines,
are-
the double lines they having over there?
We're looking into them right now. That's part of the hard surface.
Hey, how much we spending on
So,
Camp Night?
We've got a couple quotes. We're looking for a couple. At least one more.
Complaints about the, having like the old lines and the new lines and it gets confused and.
Right. And we're actually thinking about making them both a multi-surface court, to where it's a tennis court and you have the pickle court inside of that court, so you can have pickleball also.
Mr. You good, Mr. Trump? Mr. Olivier?
One more follow-up question. At one time, we were talking about a splash pad in the Lydia Park. Are we still considering that possibly in the future, or where we are with that?
Possibly in the future, look at those prices. That's gonna be like in, $250,000 to $300,000, if not more.
Okay, so
To
we
get a
look-
nice size, if you're gonna do it, you just gonna do it right.
Okay, all right. All right, thank you. Yeah.
You had something, Mr. Broussard?
Mr. Trump beat me to the punch.
Oh, all right, good.
That the double striping is gonna be taken care of in this hard
Yes.
surface deal?
Yes.
Cause that was, yeah.
Anyone else? Thank you. Ms. Segura?
So the 4% calculation, is an additional $12,000 to the numbers previously budgeted, and 5% would be approximately $17,000. Fund balance at the beginning of 2.6 million. We are projecting a surplus, 126,000. So that brings the fund balance up to 2.7. And then for fiscal 23, we are looking at, about a $250,000, deficit, mainly attributable to the capital improvement. And so that'll bring the fund balance down to approximately the 2.5 million. So just to kind of address the revenues at RV, if you look at all of the revenues in the RV section, so all of those negatives, fiscal 21 revenue earned was approximately 607 compared to fiscal 22 projected is 480, and then budgeted for fiscal 23 480. 481 I think is what I had, and I just kind of rounded them, but I mean, if you look at the overall numbers from the RV park, I know that we've kind of talked about that, like in the past. So on page 15, that very bottom number, the second, or at the very bottom where it shows the totals, that's that line item that shows total RV resort. Okay, so that in fiscal 21, that negative 166, that's actually a surplus of 166,000 with the bond payment of 60,000. Yeah, and then kind of, jump over to fiscal 22 column, and then fiscal 23, about a $62,000 deficit, and that it does include the bond payment of the 60,000, and then again they've carried forward the $60,000 bond payment to fiscal 23, and then the deficit is projected at 145. So.
All right, any questions for Ms. Segura? Acadiana Fairgrounds?
Okay, so the Acadiana Fairgrounds is supported with state revenue from the Visitor Enterprise Fund. They do get, so it kind of fluctuates based on whatever is available in the Visitor Enterprise Fund. And you'll see that in the current year that they did get, it looks like the full allocation of the $85,000. They also do a lot are self-generated, the rentals of the facility, whether it's daily rentals, hourly rentals, permanent stalls, those sorts of things, the camper rentals, and then sales of shavings. They do also get a little bit of crop income from the crop that's there. Y'all want to adjust the expenses?
Good evening all, I'm George Craig, I'm the Vice Chair for the Commission for the Sugarina. So as Ms. Kim alluded to, most of our revenue streams are from holding events at the facility. You guys all may recall we mentioned that when we proposed the budget for 2022 that we intentionally scheduled many events to bring more visitors to the arena to spend full weekends, right? And that's actually paid off. We've achieved our camper hookup revenue targets along with other rentals successfully over the course of the year, so we're pretty proud of that. Also, over the course of 2022, we added Miss Melissa. We got a full-time manager at the facility, which is much needed to support those of us on the commission that have been putting in many volunteer hours to run the facility. Also, you may be aware we were awarded the $400,000 grant we made several improvements around the facility that's enticed more different producers to come in and hold events because we have nicer amenities now that's more competitive with some of our neighboring arenas. So in addition to those, I guess, improvements for 2022, we're anticipating a little higher revenue stream in 2023, driven with some price increases based on those new amenities we have in place. We also are budgeting a few items on capital outlay, like replacing some sunscreens, replacing some lawnmowers that keep up the facility grounds, and a cargo container box where we store our shavings. The current one we have needs to be replaced because the floor is rotting out. It poses a safety hazard. So overall, that's basically the changes looking through 2023. Questions from you all?
Any questions?
Yeah, I do have a question. It seems like y'all, the award for the 400,000, y'all expected to spend completely
Yes,
in
sir.
2022 with no rollover?
That's
So we'll
correct.
make everything in time, correct?
Yes, sir.
And I think the last question I had for you was this zero turn more. Is that, I mean, 10,000, is that sufficient enough? Because I know,
So we-
doesn't
we-
Public
we-
Works go out and help y'all maintain some of that facility?
They
As far as
do
the
from
grass?
time to time. I mean, the lawnmower we have now, a zero turn is commercial grade, but it's pretty well used up, right? So we have a full-time maintenance man, right? So we need the grounds to be presentable to host events, right? So Ms. Kimberly and myself, we got some state contract quotes, and basically $10,000 is what we came back with. So that's
what
what
size more is this?
I think it's a 62 or 70 inch.
And you sure that?
Wait,
That's
you
a
can
pretty
ask
good
Ms. Kim.
price,
I
but,
forwarded the quotes you received over to Ms. Kim. So that's what we
Okay.
use for the budget.
And you think
I-
it'll be enough for?
It's
the-
commercial grade, yes, sir.
Okay.
I agree. It seems cheap, but that's the quotes we came back with. So that's what we submitted in.
Thank you so much.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Any other questions? No.
Wait, I need
Mr. Gurr?
4% and 5%.
Want to finalize?
So the 4% calculation for the Acadiana Fairgrounds Commission Fund is actually a little bit less than $1,000, and then the 5% calculation is approximately $1,500 annually. Fund balance wise, they started fiscal 22 with a deficit of $126,000. We are projecting a surplus of about $42,000, so that'll reduce down that deficit. $84,000, and then there is a projected deficit for fiscal 23 of about $7,000, so that'll bring the deficit up to $91,000. So the deficit, just so y'all know, this particular fund is an enterprise fund, and there's a lot of liabilities that are actually recorded on the face of their balance sheet, which are attributing to that overall deficit. So mainly it's an OPEB liability and a pension liability that we're required to report on the face of the balance sheets, and that's what's generating that there. So there's not enough, like they don't have enough cushion per se to overcome all of that. They basically have enough to just operate in that one given year. Yes, so we still are showing, on page 3 of that report, you'll see where we're contributing about $60,000 in those 2 years. And I know you alluded to earlier, relative to the public building, but public building is basically getting to its maxed out point too. So, we probably need to be starting to think about, other things maybe that can be done, to kind of get some of the things out of public buildings.
Well, and I think the last couple of years, we only did one-time payments to each of these funds. We didn't do any of those job offerings like we've done in Acadiana Fairgrounds.
Right, yeah, they've been getting for a few years.
Correct. Oh,
Yeah,
at least 5.
yeah. Oh, yeah, maybe even more
Because
than that.
about 5 years.
Yeah.
Any questions for
Thank
Mr.
you,
Gurr?
Kim. Good
Sure.
job.
No, but I do have just a general comment, if I
Go
can
ahead.
make it. So, looking at what we had, 1, 2, 3,
Seven.
seven that came today, and looking at the amount that the workers, I'm not talking about the department heads, but that the workers make, and you alluded to it earlier, about raises, and look, we have, y'all all know the ones that's been here since 16, we have fought that a few times, but I think this is the year, if we can, I think we really need to look at that 4 to 5%. I know they all putting 2.5, but look, I run my business and look, this year with everything that has gone up and all that, I think we really need to try to keep our employees. Look, 5% isn't a lot if you look at it, you know. So hopefully, and I know not tonight's not the night, but I just don't want to let y'all know that I'm considering it after we look at all of it to at least let's. Department heads are different now, but the guys on the ground and the ladies on the ground, I think, you know, that are making minimum amount of money for doing a lot. It's time that we look at that. So I just wanted to make that comment. Thank you, Mr.
Gus.
Yeah, just to follow up, I don't think we fought the fact of wanting to give them the raise. I think at some point, our general fund, we couldn't
Well,
meet payroll at one point in time coming here. So you can see the significant improvement in that fund, well, you will, coming up, the balance. So we're in a much better position than
Yeah, absolutely.
a few years back. So no,
Yeah, thank you for clearing that up. And not that I didn't want to give him.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's just there wasn't the
I didn't
money
want to
to
get the
give.
call
Mr.
yet
Richard, you
tomorrow
wanna
that
close the
we
meeting?
fought it.
I'll add on to what Brian and Warren is talking about. One of the biggest concerns we have right now, or experiences we're having, is hiring additional people, and honestly maintaining the people that we have. I guess you guys looked at the pay that you're paying fire. I'm not going to mention it because we're being recorded, but you're looking at the pay that we're paying our employees. Right now, I have 9 openings in Public Works. Can't get anybody with the dollar amount that we have. We're going to have to make some decisions. I talk to Warren quite regular, and I can tell you right now, with the dollar amount that we have for hiring starting, with the Archer study that we have, is not cutting it. In fact, what that means is that some of the employees that we have now, they've been working for 5 and 6 and 7 years. We can't even hire people at that dollar amount. You know, so we have some tough decisions to make.
Absolutely.
And I appreciate y'all looking at trying to give some pay raises to them. We have good crews. You know, I look at Public Works. I was there, and I've been going to Public Works every day. Of course, y'all know we very sharp, and it's critical. We're in a critical position right now as far as employees. So do your best. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. I guess I'm gonna take up for these pay raises, because I wouldn't be a fireman in Iberia Parish if y'all knew what they made. I mean, y'all do. Y'all see the man in charge. But that's bad.
And it's straight across. You know,
Yeah. Oh, I'd have to look it up. But I just, I remember seeing the demanding chart for the fire department. I was like, wow, couldn't believe that.
Thank you.
All right, motion to adjourn?
Well, hey, if we could, if y'all wanna
Move.
talk a
Second.
minute about,
Oh.
y'all wanna talk a minute about the ad valorem millage,
Yeah.
the renewal piece?
Okay.
So
Motion to
those
adjourn
taxes
is-
actually expire in 2024. So I did communicate with Jason Akers to find out, you know, timing, you know, what's the earliest, what's the latest. I wasn't sure if it was early 24, if it was late 24. So Jason came back and he said that as long as everything is approved before the spring of 25, we're not gonna lose any revenue. So keep in mind, the spring of 25, y'all gonna vote on millages like May, June. Okay, so that has to be in place so that we're collecting a millage like later that year. So you figure by the spring of 25, it's too late to start calling anything. So that would need to be done in the fall. I guess presumably the latest that you could do anything would be the fall of 24. So I guess in the event that, you know, that would be unsuccessful, you know, you don't have another opportunity after that.
Well, and you
So-
know, you talking about that Avalon, we have to have some conversations about that, because what the tax assessor told us the other night, in some of those funds that we're not collecting.
That's right.
Well, so
We
and then
could
that might
lose some of that,
generate. So we're at max.
not, well,
The only
most
one
of
that's
them.
not at max is the library.
And that's the one I'm referring to.
Okay. But in order to do something, you know, we need to take into consideration, you know, the renewal aspect versus, you know, like a new tax in some venture. Like if you try to like move something to somewhere else. So we may need to start some conversations earlier with Jason, you know, if that's the avenue that we choose to follow.
Well, and that's just you're just talking about Avalon, but what about our sales tax? I mean,
Well,
that's,
yeah.
we're gonna get to that solid waste, and there's gonna have to be a decision made at the end of this year. I mean, if we can't wait, I mean, it's creeping up even faster than some of us thought or projected.
Well, so like all of those taxes are perpetual. The only sales tax that we have that's not perpetual is the mosquito tax. So it's not anything that's coming up for expiration for renewal, you know, that we have to worry about. I just don't want us to set ourselves short, you know, relative to this and not do something that maybe, you know, we should have done a little bit earlier and then kind of get caught, you know, so, I guess maybe we can kind of schedule that.
We, as a collective group, we have got to start investing in economic development so we can bring jobs to this parish and stop building stuff that brings us no money. I mean, we wasting dollars.
So Kimberly, would you be in favor of putting it on the October of '23 ballot?
I mean, I just don't want us to be unsuccessful, you know, and.
Right,
and it-
well, yeah, we're
so
familiar with
I don't
what-
know what's coming up.
March of 24. March. Yeah, that would give you the 6 months. If, March of 24.
Probably want to do it in the spring next year.
I'm just thinking the 6 months if you gotta go back.
It takes you a year to collect.
Well, so everybody knows, so y'all start talking.
All right, motion to adjourn. Second, I got it.
Bring it back.